Hello, elevator community. Welcome to the Elevator Entrepreneur Podcast. My mission is to empower my fellow elevator entrepreneurs in creating your growth plan, which is going to free your time, allowing you to rest easy. I'm your host, Sean Madden. I've had an amazing 35 years in the elevator industry, starting out in the field, managed several elevator companies, started, built, and sold Madden Elevator Company for well over market value, and serving as your NAC president. I've done a lot in the industry, and now I'm ready to pay my knowledge forward. Let's dive right in. Mr. John Dodds, great seeing you. I really appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Sean. I appreciate the invite and looking forward to having a conversation, hopefully, that your folks will find entertaining.
Absolutely. You're always entertaining, John.
Yeah.
I always enjoy talking to you. We always have great elevator conversations. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey? I always find it intriguing how people got in the elevator industry. So, tell us a little bit about how you got in the industry and what your journey was up to today.
Yeah. I agree, by the way. I think it's always interesting to find out how folks got involved in the industry. And I think my story may be one that folks know, but they don't really know the cruxes about how I got here. So I got into the industry like a lot of folks do. I knew somebody. My uncle at the time was working for Kencor, but I guess it's a little more complicated than that. I started with Kencor over 27 years ago, but what kind of brought me here was actually my son, who's 28, was born my senior year of high school. So navigating through that journey at that time of my life, I was working at three different jobs at the time. I was working at a pet store as a manager that I had been working for all through my high school journey. I worked a 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. shift. And because I was the manager, then I had to close the store. So I was there probably for about another hour, getting the store closed. And I had the opportunity to get a real quick bite to eat. And then I would go work at a grocery store doing the overnight shift from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. I was doing that for a while. And I picked up during holiday seasons and busy seasons, I would filter in working for UPS. I was packing trucks at odd hours of the day. And of course, I did it at the time because 28 plus years ago, right, you could get like an extra couple of bucks an hour for working that overnight shift. So at that time in my life, it meant a lot to earn a couple bucks an hour. There's a period in my life for 8 months to a year there where I don't really remember a lot of, because if you've ever worked an overnight shift before, you know, you never really get good sleep. When you're awake, you're never really awake. And I look back on it and oftentimes think and say that I feel like I was kind of a zombie for a while there in my life. I don't know if my uncle would remember this way, but it's the way I remember it. It was Christmas dinner. We used to have Christmas dinners at his place and sitting at the family dinner table, and I'm just nodding off and falling asleep. And he just happened to say, "Hey, I think I could get John a job where I work at this elevator company." And at that time, it afforded me an opportunity for some stability. I could
Right.
work a normal kind of 8 to 4, making $10 an hour, which, 28 years ago was a lot of money for me at that point in my life as well. I could get rid of doing some of those overnight shift things. And a lot of people just completely fell into the industry by accident as a result of that process and didn't even know there was an elevator industry, right? Like so many people just, you ride an elevator, you don't even think about this whole world that exists. And the rest is kind of just history. I fell in love with it, never
Yep.
looked back, and just kind of went from there.
Grew your career 27 years in the industry, I guess. So that's a very interesting story. I never really worked a lot of night shifts, but I did remember when I was real young, I had to go in and hang a car at a hospital, pull a jack out of the ground, try to straighten the hole out, put the jack back in, and get the car back running by Monday morning. So we worked from Friday night after the end of the hospital's shift until Monday morning. And I'll never forget, I drank coffee, and how I ended up drinking black coffee because that was all we had. So from that time on, and I had an interesting experience where I just came in the industry. My dad was an elevator guy. Most people I know found somebody they knew. They may have came up in the family, but a lot of people it's just somebody they knew.
Exactly. And I think the industry's changed a little bit now. I mean, still a lot of folks getting into the industry. through knowing people. But I do think 20 plus years ago, it was even more common, right? Like that's the way a lot of folks got into the industry. Yeah.
No, thanks for that. That's great. So, one of the things we want to talk a little bit about is business challenges. And there's probably a plethora of topics here because everybody that's been in business, ran business, owned businesses, there are always challenges. There's no way around it. It's just what you're going to do to mitigate it and try to fix it. What I'd like to talk to you a little bit about is what's one of the biggest business challenges that you've had? And what are some of the things that you did to try to help solve them? And we'll just talk through some of those things.
Yeah, as somebody that either owns or operates a business, there's so many different ways that you could go with this. One of the things that I think that might tie in nicely to the topic and potentially even what you've got going on now on your end was the process or the transformation that the team at Kencor had to go through over, this 27 plus years. We were growing the business from approximately a $4 million operation, 10 employees, 15 employees, to a $30 million operation, 110 employees. And the process that you have to go through to do that, right? And I think at a high level, it's really just probably trying to find that switch between an entrepreneurial style of management where the entrepreneur or a close group that's close to the entrepreneur is the CEO, the president, the COO, the CFO, the general manager, HR, to allowing the business to transform into what I would call a more professional style of management with multiple layers. And that process took many, many years to develop, but it's something that I have seen a lot of folks struggle with. I've even seen, folks in our industry struggle with trying to grow a business. And how do you go about doing that, right? And I think that one of the things that allowed us to do that was our involvement and close alignment with Vistage. And Vistage is this executive peer network group. I don't think it has to be that group, but I think having someone or a peer group or a coach or something like that can help guide you through that process was very, very important, because as an entrepreneur, you have to learn how to extract yourself out of the business. How do you start to delegate? One of the things that we had to learn was that it's important to delegate, which sounds so simple, right? But it's really hard to do, especially early on in the process. And then how do you get yourself to a place where, when you're running a company, set the vision, assemble the team, provide the resources, and then get out of the way and let your people do what they do. It sounds so simplistic, but it's really hard to do.
Like any entrepreneur, you feel like you have to control the entire narrative. I believe, especially when you jump out, you're doing everything on your own, and you can do it quicker, faster, better than everybody. And I even dealt with this in my business. I could grow to a certain point, and then I had to make a decision: do I want to grow an empire, or do I want to be what they often call a mom and dad shop, where I'm handling all the day to day, overseeing the sales, overseeing operations, also setting the vision. You can grow to a certain level, and I know a lot of people that's ran business that way for a long, long time, had good, successful businesses. But if you want to break through what they call the ceiling and go to that next level, you got to find some sort of support mechanism that'll help you with that, whether it's Vistage, EOS, the Elevator Entrepreneurial System was one of them that helped me tremendously. Vernon Harnish has some stuff on scaling up. There's a ton of stuff out there. Finding out what works for you and what makes sense to break through that ceiling. And like you said, I think it's an EOS term, delegate and elevate, figure out how to delegate. Trust but verify. You got to make sure that you're putting the systems in place and the KPIs and processes so that when you let go of that stuff, you're not just wiping your hands of it. You still got to make sure it's on track. And it helps elevate you to another level of management and executive management. Can you talk a little bit about that, like that journey, how you went from the doer to the overseer?
Yeah, it's not easy by any means. For a long time, my career started as a technician and worked my way up through various technical roles to become an adjuster, and then started getting into the management piece, right, where I had several different management roles up until my current role as the president of the organization. I think that a lot of education, a lot of training along the way. I think that especially when you come from a technical background, sometimes it can be a little bit of a challenge to want to go back to school and do some of those things that I've had to do over my career. And I think constantly evolving and trying to acquire as much knowledge as possible, like continual, ongoing, never ending learning process. And for me, it started with formal education, but after the completion of that, it was I'm an avid reader. I like to read a lot of books, specifically business books, and you do develop a lot of mantras along the way. The
Yeah.
couple that you just put out there, I've heard of, and I say a lot, specifically the trust but verify piece.
Leaders or readers.
Yeah, it's because there's a lot of really smart, brilliant people out there that you can learn from, and all businesses have the same problems. Whether you're an elevator business or whether you're manufacturing widgets, we all have the same problems. So I think that's where getting into that peer network or some sort of executive coach, or if you don't want to do something like that, you can read, you can train yourself, you can get involved in an industry group like the one that we're involved in with the NAC, and that's how you learn from your peers. Constantly evolving along the way, I think, is really important. Educating yourself along the way, elevating folks that are underneath you. I had the ability to learn from so many amazing mentors in the industry. Obviously, my father in law, the guy that originally hired me 20 plus years ago, just allowing me the platform to continually evolve and learn and fail. Obviously, failing and learning from failures is key. I think that I'm a big believer too in organizational charts, and it can bring clarity along the way through that growth process. When you do start to delegate to folks, it really allows for alignment. And then you do that trust but verify thing that you mentioned, or inspect what you expect. Another way of saying the same thing.
I failed a little bit on the trust but verify. It's like you work so hard and you get to that point where I was a little bit burnt out on the operations side. And so when I was able to start working on strategic planning, put somebody in the operations role, gave them the tools, gave them the KPIs, and said, I'm here for you, I backed away a little more than I probably should have instead of supporting them more because I was a little burnt out and I did the trust, but I didn't do the verify. And I learned the hard way that you have to verify, but you also have to guide. So you verify, and then when things are off track, like the KPIs aren't where they should be, start having conversations in a supportive way, not a it's your fault way. And that's really the mentorship piece that I learned over the years is they're going to do it different and that's okay, but support them, give them some ideas to consider, but let them take the reins and run with it. And it's a learning process to figure out how to do that stuff.
Yeah, you mentioned the strategic planning process. That's something that, especially if you want to have a growing business, right? And not everybody wants to do that. Some folks are just happy staying where they are as a smaller organization. But if you want to start growing your business and you want to start thinking about adding people and layers of management, and especially as a merit shop contractor, that training and constantly bringing in new folks, the strategic planning process is such an important process. We used to do it annually, and we had a 1, 3, and 5 year plan. We never went any further than five. And to be fair, even that 5 year plan oftentimes was kind of murky because the business is evolving so much that it would almost come obsolete or change so much by the time we got there through some of those periods of rapid growth.
Was you overestimating it? I'm just curious.
I think oftentimes we would underestimate it, possibly also just not fully comprehend at the time how quickly things were changing and evolving. If you're constantly evolving, a lot of the stuff that you would put on paper for 5 years out just was not relevant by the time you got there because so many things had changed along the way.
Yeah, I remember the big, hairy, audacious goal
Hmm.
and just figuring out where you want to go. I think the process of that, even if you totally miss it, is to think ahead and then work your way backwards to figure out, okay, if I want to do this, what do I need to do in 3 years? What do I need to do in a year? What do I need to do in 90 days? And that process helped me tremendously.
Yeah, and start with the end in mind, right? And the hedgehog concept, trying to understand what it is you're good at, not be all things to all people. So many great things that came out of that book specifically.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Well, that's great stuff, John. I sure appreciate your time. I think we could stay here and talk all day about this stuff. Strategic planning is one of my favorite subjects and one that I really enjoy. And then also enjoy looking at how to implement that plan into tactics. But as I grew as a owner, leader, entrepreneur, I had to learn how to back away and let the tactical stuff be done by the people that's in it every day. Because often you've probably seen this and maybe even had that issue yourself where you build the plan and you implement the plan and you back away, but then you jump back in and go, wait a minute, we need to do this, this, and this, and you drive your people nuts.
it actually becomes counterproductive. And I don't think there's anything wrong with standing back or standing from afar and refereeing a little bit or knocking them back on track if they're getting too far outside of where you intended it to go.
Mm-hmm.
But at a certain point, I do believe it becomes counterproductive to start to get yourself back in the mix. And if you have the right people, then you need to put the right people in the right seat, and then you need to get out of the way and let
Yep.
them do what they do best. Otherwise, you're going to restrict the growth of the organization because you become the bottleneck, right? You're
Yep.
also not allowing your people to fully reach their potential.
And that's one other last thing I wanted to mention is when I was able to get out of the way and it gave me time and capacity to think, I could actually think further ahead and start thinking about bigger picture stuff and bigger strategies that you can't think about when you're in the weeds every day. And so that really helped me grow the company in that capacity.
Yeah, I used to, but still do say you have to find time to work on the business as opposed to working in the business, right? And if you're just constantly working in the business every day, again, it's going to prevent you from, getting the organization to where you want it to go. So finding time through some mechanism, at least I would say 8 hours a month, if not maybe even 2 to 3 days a month if you can,
Mm-hmm.
which can be hard depending upon what phase of the business cycle or what phase of your growth cycle you're in. But finding time to extract yourself out of the business to work on the business. And I think the way that you just said it is really powerful. You need to get out of it to find time to get some clarity, and you will think of things that you wouldn't have thought about if you were in the day to day. You get a little bit more clarity around where it is you want to go or when you want to drive the business.
Yep, absolutely. Great stuff, John. Just to wrap this up, what's one solid piece of advice you'd like to give our elevator entrepreneurs? What would be one good solid piece of advice you would like to leave our listeners with?
Goodness, there could be so many. Well, as it relates to elevator entrepreneurs specifically, it's maybe to just get involved in your industry, because especially when you're a smaller organization, 2 to 10 guys in a truck kind of thing, mom and pop, however you want to say that, you are so busy. And if you're able to get involved in the industry, which we did when we were much smaller, and it just opened our eyes to this whole new world that we didn't even know, existed. When you get involved in the industry, you network with folks, you start to build your black book, if that's the right way of putting it. You'd be surprised at how much you'll learn, how many people you'll engage with that will help you grow your business. And I think you did it along your journey as well, getting involved with the NAEC. It really will allow you to spread your wings, both personally and professionally, I think. And can't say enough good things about getting involved in the industry. The two of us have been very involved in the industry for a number of years. It does take some time and energy and effort to do, but no matter how much time I have ever put in or given, I think I've always gotten way more back in return. I mean,
Yep.
in spades.
100%. And yeah, you and I have been working closely together over the years at NAC. You've been a mentor of mine. Really appreciate you taking the time today. I thank you for all your insights and opinions. The whole intent is to give our listeners some experiences that we've experienced, and hopefully they can take them and maybe improve their business. So thanks a lot, John. I appreciate you joining the show today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Elevator Entrepreneur Podcast. I truly hope this information helps my fellow elevator entrepreneurs to build your growth plan so you can free your time, allowing you to rest easy. If you need help getting your elevator business organized for growth, I've created tools and templates inside my favorite business operating system that you can access for free. Plus, you can have a 30-day free trial of the software. Just head over to elevatorstrategichub.com/ebos. That's /EBOS to get your free access, or you can click the link below. Thanks again. I'll be back next time with a brand new episode on the Elevator Entrepreneur. Until next time, stay safe out there, and I will continue to empower my fellow elevator entrepreneurs.